Siemens, in 2008, he offers the first MOOC course. He didn't call it a MOOC. It was named afterwards, but he offers the first MOOC with tens of thousands of students. Actually, it was offered at the University of Manitoba, but he had an affiliation with Athabasca. And so there was a whole new generation. People who were involved with instructional and online technology were familiar with what George was doing. But it wasn't until a few years later when Sebastian Schroon, who at Stanford University, offers a MOOC course, and now we're using the term MOOC, Massive Open Online Course, and about 160,000 students enroll. What does Sebastian Schroon do? He leaves Stanford, gets funding from Silicon Valley, and starts his own company called Udacity. That was followed shortly after by Coursera with Daphne Kollner, who was also from Stanford, and Anant Agarwal, which is a lot to say, and who then establishes edX. And those are probably the three main players in MOOC technology today. And what happened during this time is everyone was talking MOOC. You could not go to any conference on higher education, I'm not saying a technology conference, any conference, without someone talking about MOOCs. There was a mania. Right? It was overhyped. We know that in technology. That happens a lot, right? We hype something to death, literally to death, to the point where we don't want to hear this anymore. And if you think that's a new concept, that isn't. Ida Lovelace in the 1840s said the same thing. Here's a question. Who was Ida Lovelace? Put your hands up. Don't be shy. What did he do? What did she do? What did she do? Well, she actually developed programming. She never programmed anything. She worked with Charles Babbage on a machine that he never developed. He had the design for it, and she designed the programming language for it. But neither ever was implemented. But there's one point where if you, and I'm getting this out of this biography, or multi-biography by Walter Isaacson on the innovators. Look in there, the first chapter, he talks about Ada Lovelace. And she says about how we invent all these things only to kill them and kill them off after a while. But it's the same thing happened with MOOCs. Now, what happened with MOOCs, we went to this mania. But in 2013, Sebastian Schroon gives an interview. After a very, very, I wouldn't say failed, but modestly successful, and that's being generous, experiment at San Jose State University, where they put in a number of courses using MOOC technology. In any case, he gives the interview where he basically says, and this is documented. If you haven't heard of it, you can go to my blog and put in Schroon, it'll come out. Basically said, we've developed a lousy product. You couldn't be more candid than that. And you know what? He was right. Maybe a little bit too self-critical. The MOOC technology, particularly the early MOOCs, were designed to be access and cost-effective. They were not designed to be pedagogically sound. As a matter of fact, a lot of us who had lots of experience with this were saying, you know, where is the pedagogy? These were pedagogical wastelands in many ways, particularly those early MOOCs. That has begun to change. And you have to realize that the MOOC technology is not generated by faculty. It is generated by venture capital, some significant venture capital, by the way. And we know that with technology. Excuse me. We know, for instance, I mean, just in our own environment. How many of you use Blackboard? Right? Everyone uses Blackboard. Well, a couple of us, I think I see Manfred Phillip here, we were on committees where we brought Manfred Phillip and Manfred Kukler, we were on committees where we brought Blackboard here in the late 90s. Blackboard at that time was owned by former graduate students and a couple of faculty from Cornell University. Who owns Blackboard now? That's the question. Who owns Blackboard now? Providence Equity Group. $60 billion in assets. It's a venture capital operation. Venture capital and these kinds of operations, and we heard that in the last election with Mitt Romney, they basically look to extract profit. And you make profit by two ways. You either increase prices or you reduce costs. And that's their interest in Blackboard. And that's who we are dependent upon in CUNY, as well as about 70% of higher education. We've moved from the graduate students at Cornell who were doing some interesting work to a whole different environment. That kind of experience in lots of technology and lots of endeavors, talk to some of our colleagues in the health sciences, repeats itself over and over again. So we're at the, so the fourth, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't keep up with this, I apologize. Fourth wave. Well, you were paying attention, so that's good. So the fourth wave, and this is where I want to really spend the bulk of my time. So we've done a lot of good things with technology. We have high-speed modems, we have mobile computing, we have tablets, right? Not all of us text, but most of us, I would bet, I can see it. You have your laptops out, you're looking at your phones, and you're looking at your iPads and what have you. It's part of who we've become, even more so with our students, by the way. But where I think we are now, in 2014, the MOOC phase is over. That's gone, thanks to Sebastian Troon. Also, Daphne Kollner, about a year ago, at a Sloan conference in Orlando, she was very candid also. She basically said, and she's the head of Coursera, she basically said that she did not think MOOCs were right for all kinds of students, and that for the foreseeable future, they would be moving into a blended model. They see their software being used as kind of learning objects that would be added to face-to-face courses on the part of faculty. In any case, we're now in this new wave, the fourth wave. I'm glad I didn't need to use my notes. I'm about 4 pages behind here. So, in this model now, we are now actually trying to reconcile the pedagogical model that was blended learning with the access and course benefit model that was the MOOC model. That's where I think we are right now. This is my opinion. You can disagree with me, but that's where I see where we are. We're reconciling these two things. The pedagogical model is definitely being driven by faculty who think this is very important for teaching and learning. The MOOC model, the access model, and the course benefit model is being driven by a lot of people outside of the university. A lot of people. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. However, we cannot ignore it. We can't say, no, we're not going to do it. We as faculty, I think, need to grab hold of this and say, we're going to control how it's going to happen in our university. And we can do it. Keep in mind what I said about the blended model. That was driven by faculty, not by outsiders. In addition to reconciling those two models, we're going to see some relatively new technologies that are going to be added to them. And you should be aware of this. Learning analytics. Some people think this is very good. Others think it's too expensive in terms of what you're going to get from it. If you're in a fully online environment, I would recommend immediately, whatever the institution is, you should consider purchasing analytics, learning analytics. We've had presentations here at CUNY about this. And my advice to the administration, to George, was I think we should go slow with this because we don't have enough online activities going on here. But learning analytics is important now. It's relatively new. It will continue to be important, and it's going to be important as long as we have these very, very high attrition rates in our colleges and universities. That is not going away. As long as we have, in some cases, 15 or 16% of our students graduating in any respectable amount of time, people are going to look to say, what can we do to improve that? And we live in a world that's very much data-driven, and if it's not learning analytics, it's going to be some other kind of data-driven approach that's going to look at what are we doing with these students, how can we help them stay in school? And a lot of people think learning analytics is one of the tools to do that. I think it works very well in the online environment. I think it remains to be seen how it's going to work in the blended environment and the face-to-face environment. I think there's other issues there, which a little bit I don't have the time to go into right now. The other important trend we're seeing is adaptive learning or differentiated instruction. This is where and this is very, very much software driven, but the concept is an old one. For those of you who are in schools of education, anybody? Anybody? Okay. You know, we went through differentiated instruction. How do we develop? We know that one model doesn't fit well with all students. How do we work with Johnny, and how do we work with Janie, who has this issue and that issue? And it's very difficult to do in a face-to-face environment, particularly if you have a large class size. But in the online environment, actually, it is not too difficult to do. But it reduces the instruction to a lot of, let's say, machine interfacing. But there's a lot of interest in it. There's some pedagogical truth in terms of adaptive learning that we need to pay attention to. I think we'll see more of that in the years to come. Competency-based instruction. This is a very interesting phenomena. I mean, 20 years ago, I mean, how many of you know about the Western Governors University? Okay, about a third of you. 20 years ago, the Western Governors University did not exist. It now has 50,000 students, all competency-based. I did an evaluation of their faculty about 2 years ago for the state of Massachusetts. You would not like that model. No full-time faculty, all part-time faculty, who don't even work from course to course, they work from day to day. You would not like that model. But they have 50,000 students, and if you think they're the oddball, maybe, but we have the University of Southern New Hampshire. I mean, a few years ago, they had 3,000 students on campus. Now they have 35,000 students on a competency-based online model. Are there going to be lots of those? I don't know. But I think there's going to be more of them. Social media. We all know social media. Half of you are using it right now. Social media has come in many ways, not just in education, but our whole society has become keyed and revolve around social media. We look at our phones. We look at our texting. Our students use it a lot. In addition, a lot of our faculty think social media has a very, very important place to play, particularly in any kind of disciplines where expression is very important, where you want students to express what they're reading, what they're hearing. Social media can be very effective with that. It can be very effective for collaboration. I like collaborative learning. Pre-online, if I said we're going to do some collaborative learning, my students would put their heads down and say, you know, I don't want to work with 3 other people. They'd have to get together with, you know, colleagues in the library or in the cafeteria. They hated it. Online makes it a lot more graceful. They do not have to go and meet in the library or in the cafeteria. They can do it at home. They can do it every day. And for those of us who've worked with blogs and wikis, we find a very interesting product has evolved from that. To me, that's good. Open sources and learning objects. We're going to see a lot more of this. This is not new, but the MOOC development has added a whole other level of open source and learning objects. And I think that's where their future is, at least for the next few years. That they will essentially be providing software or courseware that many of us will pick and choose and integrate into our courses as we see fit. And I think that's and this is not new. Merlot, for those of you who might be familiar with the California system, Merlot has been around for about 15 years. But the MOOC development has added a whole nother level to this. So I see a lot more faculty using learning objects and open source software. And the last is gaming and multi-user virtual environments. This goes up and down. There are some disciplines where this is very appropriate. If I was teaching, in a business program, and I was teaching, the ups and downs of the stock market, I think I would use gaming. I think it would be very interesting to work with that. In a lot of our other disciplines, I'm not sure. I'd have to be very creative to figure out how I would use it. But I do know it takes an incredible amount of devotion on the part of faculty to use this well. If they want to develop it, thank you. If they want to develop it, it'll take an enormous amount of investment of time. So, but there are disciplines who are very much interested in gaming and multi-user virtual environment, and I think that we will see more of it. Is it going to be a groundswell? Absolutely not. I think we have faculty picking and choosing what they want to do with gaming. Okay. So, the major theme for this fourth wave is that one size will not fit all. There's not going to be one thing that's going to happen to all of higher education. Different types of schools will approach online and blended learning and MOOC technology differently. Surely we have something, and the Chancellor referred to this, we have a kind of, I wouldn't say it's unique, but in terms of scale it's unique. We have 24 colleges with, 500,000 students in all programs within the 300 square miles of New York City. The way we approach technology is going to be different than what the University of Nebraska in Lincoln is going to do. It's going to be different. Right? It's going to be different than how a Penn State approaches it, how a University of Maryland University College approaches it, how our institutions in the for-profits approach it. There's not going to be one size that fits all. Even within a college, the way the faculty approach technology, it's different from one college to the other, different from one program to the other. Some students like it, some students don't like it. There will not be one size that fits all. Some faculty will adopt it, and they will do it as best they can in their particular programs or courses, and some won't, and there'll be everything in between. Some of the concerns in this fourth wave, maybe issues is a better word. We're seeing a lot more government intervention and oversight at all levels, federal and state, and a lot of it is technology driven. If you talk to the Department of Education, New York State Department of Education, United States Department of Education, United States Department of Education, has a lot of people from the Gates Foundation there. Technology is good, use more technology. That's a basic theme that's going on. Technology is good if it's used in the right way. The corporate America is all behind, higher education, and by the way, K-12, there's even bigger issues, which I don't think we want to be distracted with. There's even big issues there with technology. But corporate America is very much interested in education as a profit center. Fortunately, maybe, in some ways, fortunately, K-12, because it's about 8 times the size of higher education, that's where a lot of corporate America has focused their interest. Talk about Pearsons and Amplifies. I mean, Rupert Murdoch is involved with education. I better not say it. So we have the venture capitalists. Also, I've already mentioned the venture capitalists. The global enterprises. I'm glad that the Chancellor mentioned global enterprises, because this is going to be a very interesting phenomena, how this evolves. Right now, we have over 900,000 students who attend American colleges and universities in face-to-face courses. A lot of colleges who have been in this, who have attracted lots of foreign students over the years, they're moving to online models in many ways, and those are growing in fairly good numbers. We could put aside, the NYU. I'm not talking about the NYU experiment in the Middle East, where John Sexton got a lot of flack from his faculty. I'm talking about a lot of schools that are developing relationships with colleges and universities all over the world. And they're doing a lot of it in online mode. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And last but not least, the disruptors. I would say beware of the disruptors. And I'm not against Clayton Christensen, who kind of coined the phrase. Clayton Christensen, when he did his first book on education, pre-K-12 education, to make his predictions, he actually used data that myself and Jeff Seaman had collected on K-12 education. So I know him a little bit. This was done through several emails. And his concept of disruption was okay. But now it's used as a code word that basically says, you've got a problem, and you've got to be disruptive, and you have to correct it. I disagree with that. We don't have a problem. We have issues that we need to resolve. And I think we're doing a good job of resolving them. So beware of those who want to disrupt us. We don't need to be disrupted. We can put in technology in a planned, pedagogically valuable way. We don't need to be disrupted. I think I'm running tight on time, right, Bobby? I'm done for the whole day? Oh, Jesus. Well, any questions? Wait, I have question. By the way, this PowerPoint is on my blog. You can go there and look at it, and there's a place for you to ask questions. By all means,
There are microphones.
questions. Do I have 5 minutes left? Or 15 minutes left?
15 minutes of questions.
15 minutes of questions. Oh, thank God. Whew.
Okay, my name is Janet Michello from LaGuardia Community College. And my question is, would you say that most of your presentation focuses on undergraduate courses?
No.
Or are you also seeing perhaps a change in attitude regarding people who take online graduate courses?
No, I was not thinking undergraduate or graduate. If anything, I probably think slightly different in terms of discipline to discipline. But I think the graduate, what happens on the graduate level, in my own opinion, is that anyone who studies online learning, and even the online learning that's in a blended environment, there's an issue of maturity, there's an issue of stick-to-itiveness, there's an issue of organization in terms of students who will be successful in these environments. Much of the research indicates that the graduate student is a little bit better there in that respect than some of the undergraduates. On the other hand, the undergraduates probably handle the technology much better. But whether they, in terms of their own development, are ready to do online learning, they need to have some of these intangibles. You know, they just don't, you know, they need to have basic skills of reading and writing and doing arithmetic. But they also have to have this kind of persistence. They have to rely on, you know, organizing themselves. You know, the classroom, which is kind of a safe place where you come in, you know, once or twice a week, that's gone, and you have to do a lot of work on your own. So I wasn't thinking, and none of my presentation was I thinking specifically undergraduate or graduate.
Okay, I just have a brief follow-up to what you just stated. Then how do we deal with the stigma that is frequently associated with people who obtain degrees online? Like, for example, I recently was having a conversation with a colleague and who was on a search committee, and the statement was made that every single application that came through with an online doctorate was automatically tossed out.
I think that's a great question, and you know we've been discussing this for a while, and I'll go back to a discussion I had I think in 1999 at Hunter College with the governing group there. They wanted to list on each course whether it was going to be an online course or a face-to-face course. I argued against that. I said it's not, what's important is not the modality. What's really important is who's teaching it. Professor Jones, who's a great teacher face-to-face, I think Professor Jones can be a great teacher online. If Professor Jones is not a good teacher face-to-face, the online environment is not going to do anything for him. So in my sense, it is not the modality. It's who's teaching it, how well they're teaching it. And I argued against, at least back in 1999, that we should not be designating courses online or face-to-face on the student transcript anyhow. I don't know where they are now. I haven't really been at Hunter for about 7 years, but that should not be designated. But there's another part of this which I think is more important to your question. There are some schools that are strictly online schools, and we have concerns about that. We have concerns where online schools have 80% of their faculty who are adjuncts. We have concerns about that. And I'm not putting down the adjuncts. I started my career as a teacher in 1971 at BMCC, teaching systems analysis and COBOL programming. 6-hour courses for a young person with a couple of kids. That was great. It was a big chunk of change. Back then we used to get paid once a month. So it was a big chunk of change to get, you know, that check. And on Thursday night we'd go to Hotel Taft and have a few drinks in the piano bar. So I love adjuncts. But for those of us who've been in higher education a while, we know there's a benefit to have full-time faculty who are completely dedicated to their programs in many cases. And at CUNY, we are blessed with a lot of faculty who are dedicated to their programs. They're dedicated to the students. I'm one who could not afford to go to college. I started my college career at night. It was supported in 1965, 66, 67. I was supported by faculty. And I still see in 2014 the same kind of faculty supporting their students. Bless you all. Allison.
Hi, Anthony. Allison Vogel from Lehman College. I have to thank you so much for the encouragement about hybrid. I know you're so accurate about that it is not necessarily the delivery, but the faculty. That's always going to be that, and it's always going to be, hopefully, people like us, passionate people who want to help support them in pedagogical strategy and building those strategies. So I just want to say, I want to really be clear that I think hybrid is such a terrific model for CUNY to be looking at. I'm proud that over the last couple of years there's been funding for it. I hope that we see that as a direction that clearly, speaks to your speech, and I want to say thank you for that. But secondarily, I wanted to ask you what you thought about the recent California State increases of 27%.
Yeah, that's a great question. Did you see my blog
mentioned it
yesterday?
in your
Yeah.
blog. Yes. So
Yeah, for those of you not